Hello, let's talk about retopology. Retopology in Blender is very natural and very easy. And since it's very integral part of my job as a artist, 3D artist working in the games industry, retopology is a big chunk of my work. So I'll show you how I retopologize in Blender and some uh, tips and tricks that I've learned, and then some specialized tools for retopology, which are add-ons in Blender. And I also uploaded recently um, another video where I show my retopology process in real time, but there's no audio on that. So in this video, I'll basically try to give some explanation about what kind of stuff it is that I use and how I use it and why I use it. So I have a high poly object here. Um, I'll just go out of the render. There we go. And just get it. All right. So we want to make a low poly version of this high poly mesh. So as you can see, uh, it's quite quite a dense mesh. It's basically a ZBrush model that's been decimated and then imported as an OBJ into Blender. So the way I usually start retopologizing is by creating a single vert. There we go. And then it's created and it's placed here. And then I'll go into snap mode, which you'll find here. I use the pie menu. So I'll go into snap mode. And then I'll make sure that I have face snap element selected, closest, and then all these options turned on. Now, I have to give a little bit of a disclaimer. I know what happens when I turn these options off, but I don't really understand why I would use them when they're off. Um, so just to run through them very quickly, I'll open the Blender documentation. These are the additional snapping options. So the first one, which is this one, snaps element to its own mesh. I suppose I understand why I would have that on, and I guess there's sometimes where you want to have it off, but I have it on 90% of the time. Then align rotation with the snapping target. I think this is specifically when you're in object mode, because in edit mode I haven't seen any specific differences. I'll show you how it looks with it turned on and off in edit mode, and I haven't noticed any differences. And then this one is kind of important. Project individual elements on the surface of other objects. I don't understand why you would have this off, because the results I get when I have this off are weird and not very usable. And I tried to do some research online, trying to find some articles that really explain this in depth. And it sounds pretty basic the way that it's explained here, but I'd like to have a little bit more of an in-depth explanation about why I would work without this on. So, but I don't really know. So the bottom line is I turn all of these on, and I turn on the automatic merge as well, and I'll go over that in a second. So now that I have snapping turned on, set it to face, closest, and all of these options turned on. Let me just quickly show you what happens if I turn them off. So if I turn them off, well, before I do that, I'll just position my vert, and you'll see that it basically is rolling on top of the mesh below. And I don't need to select the target mesh or anything like that. It's basically just snapping on any kind of geometry that I'll find that it'll find in the mesh in the scene. Sorry. So I'll extrude, and then I'll go into edge mode and extrude again. And now I have a face. And if I turn off my snapping and I go into face mode, you'll see that this is the face. I'll undo that and I'll go back into snapping. So if I now turn off all these options and I go into vertex mode, you'll notice a few weird things. The first one that's kind of weird is that it's when I want to drag this vert, it's kind of snapping it. And when I turn on the uh, project individual elements on the surface of other objects, then I don't get this weird snapping. So I can like drag stuff without it snapping to my cursor. Yeah. So I I have this on all the time. Then I'll just turn it off again very briefly, and then if I turn on the rotation snapping, then you'll notice I get this line which shows me the rotation of the mesh below it. But if I turn it off, the results are the same. I just don't see the line. So whatever, I just keep it on. And then this one, I guess this one I can't really illustrate because I need to be able to have a mesh that allows me to snap onto itself. And at the moment, this is just a polygon. So I'll just turn all of these on. Then the merge automatically, which is this button. This is off. This is on. If I drag two verts close to each other, you'll see they'll snap to each other and basically merge. The threshold for that you set here, or you can also set it in the preferences, but I always set it here. So you'll find this under I think under options, the options tab, and if you want it to be less less sensitive, then you can just, or more sensitive, you can just drag it all the way to very low value, and then it'll take you have to get it really, really perfectly close for it to snap. You can see it's almost impossible at this point. Yeah, it's pretty much impossible with this low value. And then on the other hand, if you want to have it snap very easily, just turn this up very high, and then, it doesn't take much for it to snap. But in this case, it depends on the scale of your scene as well and your object. So in this case, I think this is a little bit too high, so I'll just lower it. Still too high. Still like that. Yeah, that's perfect, I think. Okay, so right, let's start retopologizing. So basically, I'm not going to retopologize the whole thing. I'll just go over the basics. So what I use is I usually just switch between edge and vert, or I enable both of them, and then I can work on both of them. So this, and then I select the edge. I extrude by pressing E. Just position all my stuff. Extrude again. Oh, sorry about that. Extrude again. Extrude again. So there's a lot of just extruding and tweaking stuff. See, this is merging automatically. There we go. Like that. So you kind of get the idea. If you want to see like a full process of retopologizing, you can check my previously uploaded video where it's kind of boring. There's no audio and it's just retopologizing a mechanical piece, but it shows you my whole retopology. So basically that gives you the idea, and I don't really do anything different than what I've just shown you. One thing that I might do is, this is kind of what you just saw is I pressed Control R to basically split or loop cut these polys. And unfortunately, when you do that, it doesn't automatically snap. So the best thing to do is then to just press G and move the whole loop a little bit, and then it'll automatically snap. So I want to illustrate another small problem. So I just selected this poly, and you can select polys without going into poly edit mode by basically selecting two edges that are parallel to each other. And then I'll press Shift D, and I'll drag this out, and I just duplicated basically the poly. So let's say that I'm gonna just basically loop this around like that. I'm not gonna bother too much by having a nice topology. So if I want to connect these two, I can just drag them to each other, or I can basically select both edges and then press W and E. If I press E now, it's basically going to select bridge edge loops. So I press E and it basically bridged these two. And if you go into the options, you can do a lot of tweaking here. But one of the options is merge, and then it's basically going to merge them. So if now that I've selected merge, it's basically gonna do this all the time unless I change it. And so let's say that I duplicate this one. Oh, another. Okay, there we go. And I want to merge these two together. WE, and now it's automatically merging. So this is pretty much the fastest way of merging two edges together or welding two edges together. And one upside to this is that you still have the option open and you can sort of tweak it to which edge needs to merge with which edge. So this is a very powerful operation. Okay, so what I wanted to show you with this is that now that I have this loop going all the way around the object, if you have snapping enabled and you want to basically drag up this edge, this is going to be problematic because it's going to want to snap to basically the viewport angle. So if I move this edge up, at first sight it looks alright, but then if you look closer, it basically took all the verts from the back and snapped it to the front. So this is a bit of a mess. So the easiest way to handle that is basically by going out of snap mode, and then just dragging the verts up or the loop up, and then scaling it up a little bit. There we go, and then going back into snap, and then just snapping them back to the mesh like that. That's how I get around that. Maybe there's a faster way of doing it. I don't know, but this is fast enough for me. All right, so that's pretty much the basics. I don't think I do anything else that's special. There's a whole bunch of things that you can still do to make your life easier. Like if I subdivide this a little bit more, and let's say that these are all a little bit out of whack, and I want to smooth all of this a little bit. Let's go into face mode and select all these polys. And what I can do is I can smooth this whole piece of geometry by I use an additional tool which I'll go over later, which allows me to access this directly. It's called Laplacian Relax, and you see it's basically relaxing the geometry every time I do that. If you want to access this without the tool, the add-on that I'm using, you can just press W and access it here. Although it's not really working. Maybe I need to select the verts. Yeah, this is not working actually. Interesting. So maybe it's something else I need to. Okay, so I actually don't know this. So I'm sure there's a way to access this, but I'm used to using the tool that I'm using, and I'll link you to that tool in the comments or in the video description. But it's somewhere around here, I'm sure. Like maybe it's on the verts, smooth vertex. Yeah, this is smoothing, but it's not snapping, and that's the difference with using this tool, is that it still maintains the snapping. So maybe this is just something that's specific to the tool. I don't know, but it's not such a big deal anyway. All right, I'll just undo some of this a little bit. So you may have noticed that sometimes it's a little bit tricky to select pieces of geometry because they're kind of hidden, specifically the edges, they're kind of hidden behind the hyperpoly. And like if I want to select, I can select it now, but it's hard to see them. And sometimes you'll find that it's going to be hard to select them as well. So there are a few workarounds to this. One of them is you can start off by under the panel here on the right, you can select hidden wire. And what hidden wire does is it basically, let me see if I can illustrate this. If I go to object mode, and well, I don't have to go to object mode, I can stay in that mode. I'll isolate the mesh, and now I'm just seeing this mesh, my low poly mesh, and you'll see that it's basically just showing kind of like a wireframe essentially. And if I turn this off, it shows me the geometry. And this does help when retopologizing, but you see it doesn't really solve the problem of having some of the edges disappear. And to solve that, you can go into X-ray mode. And you see in X-ray mode, it's basically showing you the low poly as a priority over the high poly or the mesh behind it. There are some issues with this as well. So for example, if I move my camera, you'll start seeing the back-facing geometry through the high poly, and this can get really confusing. So I usually just turn it off and on as I'm working. There is still another option, and that's the limit to visible. And this one might actually be better than the X-ray, because you'll see a difference between the verts that are behind the geometry and the verts that are in front of the geometry. Sort of. They're a little bit less opaque. So I usually just turn this off and on while I'm working, and same with X-ray. So it's not a 100% solution, but it's, you know, once you get used to working this way, it's very fast. So that's pretty much it. That's my default way of retopologizing. And now I want to very quickly show you a free retopology tool that has some additional features that is quite powerful, and I sometimes use it as a starting point. So I'll delete this geometry, my low poly geometry, and I'll go to this tool called Speed Retopo. And this is a add-on by Cédric Lepillier, or his nickname is Petit Oiseau, I think. And so he's a French add-on developer for Blender, and I'll link you up to his website and his tools, and I think they're all very fantastic. So let me start off by showing you how to use this tool briefly. And I'll link you to his introduction video that's more in depth about how to use it. But I just want to give you an idea of how what the kind of stuff you can do with this tool. So you basically select the high poly here, and then you press Setup Retopo, and then you're in kind of retopo mode. And this does a whole bunch of things in the background that you may not notice. One of the things it's done is it's created a new mesh, which is your retopology mesh, and then it's created a bunch of modifiers on this retopology mesh, and specifically shrink wrap and mirror. So it's shrink wrapped your new mesh to the high poly mesh, and it's created a mirror, but since I don't have any geometry yet, you don't see anything, right? So the way to start using this tool is by using the grease pencil. The grease pencil is a weird little tool in Blender that's incredibly powerful for the kind of stuff that I'm going to show you right now. So by holding down D and dragging your mouse, you're basically drawing a line. And and it's snapping to the geometry behind it. If I do this again and again, I now have 3 lines, a little bit messy, but doesn't matter. If I press Add B Surface, it's basically creating geometry based on those lines that I drew. And then you can edit the amount of rows here and do some other stuff with it. And then you can start dragging. And you'll see that it's mirroring, and that's because of this mirror modifier, and you can basically just turn it off in the tool here. And now I can just continue to work like I've been working before by extruding stuff and extruding more stuff. And if I want, I can draw another line and then select these and press Add B Surface, and as you can see, it's just connecting all of these. And then what I can do as well is I can just press the relax button, which is the same thing as, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing as the Laplacian smooth, although could be something different actually. I think it's, yeah, I think it's different. So, and I'm pretty sure you can access it separately without using this tool. So, so this is a very powerful tool. There's a whole bunch of additional options here. The space option I think is very useful. It basically, if you're, let's see if I can show this a little bit better. This is again a tool that's available outside of this menu. So if I select all of these and I press space, it's basically spacing them evenly, and I can do the same here, space. And if I then relax, you see it's pinning down the boundaries, so I can get an even spacing. If I'm done with this, or I don't want to use the tool anymore, then I can just go into edit mode, and or go into object mode, and I can apply the shrink wrap if I want, and now it's just a basic tool. So, well, actually, it's still linking to the reference object. So I don't know how to completely disconnect it from the object. Maybe it's something to do with the parenting. Maybe it's parented to the object, although I don't think so. So I'm not sure about that, but that's probably explained in Cédric's YouTube video on the tool as well. So this is an example of a retopology tool that's pretty powerful if you're used to working like that. Personally, I prefer working kind of more manual and using the basic Blender snapping functionality. So I think that pretty much sums up how I retopologize in Blender. If you have any questions, or if you have any answers to some of the questions I had regarding the snapping tools and the relax stuff, feel free to put them in the comment. And if you have any requests for any other videos, also feel free to add them in the comments. Alright, see you later.